Hello students, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Indira Ghosh from JNU. Today we are going to talk on the module which is called Introduction to Force Field under the paper Computational Biology. Our learning objectives is atomic interactions, force fields, what they are, and parameters and functions of the force fields. We are discussing about how the representation of an atom is displayed in this system. When we represent the atoms, as per classical mechanics, it's been used as if it is a solid object. And obviously, every atom point will have its position XYZ and its shape. Usually, it's a spherical ball, and also it will have a mass. Mass will be decided by the atom type. It also sometimes may carry even electric charge, that is either positive or negative. However, most often we represent an atom in our methods of atomic interaction calculations, partial charges, not positive or negative. It is actually much a fraction of an electron unit. And it's been considered most often the hydrogens, most often having 0.0001. So we will next go to show you how it takes care of chemistry when we show you next. This is a case study where we show you there are two types of bond possible amongst the atoms. Most often occurs in our molecules, macromolecules like protein, DNA, carbohydrates. They are formed either ionic or covalent bond. Many cases we may find coordinate valence also. However, this picture shows you when it is like a purely atoms can attain a more stable arrangements in electrons in their outermost shell by interacting with one another. So, ionic bond is defined when electrons are transferred from one atom to another atom. However, the covalent bonds are found to be less than strength than ionic, which is formed when electrons are shared between atoms. So these two cases, as it shows, are depicted in the picture on the left hand side and right hand side. So these covalent bonds, which are formed by partial transfer or sharing, results into a polar covalent bond as it's shown here. Here I am going to show you small phenylalanine structure and how it is represented by our methods. This is a graphic representation. However, even in our calculation of interaction, we use the same process. Here we show you the nitrogen is blue and carbons are gray and oxygen is red and without any hydrogen atoms. If we want to define the intra-atomic interactions or bonded interactions, then this is a two-body problem. That means the bonds all are represented as if they are two-body problems. However, the angles are three-body problems, like shown between the angles between C alpha, C beta and C gamma. Torsion, which is another four-body problem, which is depicted by the ring structure. Now, this three depiction actually only refers for the interaction of bonded pairs. However, between two atoms which are more distant than four atoms, connected four atoms, you can show the non-bonded pairs, which is shown by nitrogen from the amino acids and the carbon in the ring of phenylalanine. So, we have here 3-4 types of atomic interactions. Slowly, each of these interactions will unfold in its systems, equations and parameters. I'm showing here the atomic interaction between two atoms, to one small molecule, and it is depicted here by each of this blue and red colored, and it shows also the interatomic distances. Here is two-body interaction, which is shown by bond length, which is the distance is shown here, and angle across the oxygen is shown as a three-body angles, where the value of angle is also shown here. Torsion angle between four atoms of carbons, which are bonds, rotatable bonds. Across the rotatable bonds are shown as four-body dihedral angles interaction. Values is also shown here. And there is a non-bonded interactions, which is between 1,5 atom, that is first to 5 to 6, 7, etc. And from oxygen to the ring atom carbon distance is shown here, and it has been shown how much distance it actually have. We use these typical methods of interaction calculations, and these distances are taken as parameter files at the later I will explain. Now we go to summarizing all the possible bonded interaction in next slide. Here we show forces between atoms, so bond lengths. The standard, there are two types what is used for measuring the interaction energies, and all the chemical bonds would be having a standard value which is shown as B0, and this is actually found out within limit error plus minus and used as a constant. Deviation from such energy, such a bond length, the deviation is the only thing which we measure when we find the actual forces between atoms. So we use the difference between the equilibrated molecules and from its change, what it happens. This on the left hand side shows the average interactions of each of these bonded atoms found from crystallographic data within certain minimum errors, and depicted here as zeros like B0, theta 0 and dihedral angle K0. On the right hand side is when it changes during the energy minimization or simulations or interactions. There the distances differ, so we calculate that distance and find out. This is a chemical bond, is shown in B, theta as angle between the chemical bonds, which is shown also, and last is a preferred conformation torsion angles. Torsion angle can be omega, phi, psi, or which is called main chain angles, dihedral angles or torsion angles, or it can be chi 1, chi 2, chi 3, which is amongst the side chain. Please note, angle of torsion or dihedrals are angle between two planes covered by three atoms as shown and referred earlier our modules. We come to the definition of what is called force field. Force field is nothing but collection of parameters for the potential energy function. So two things are included. One is parameter phi's and another would be the potential energy function. We will slowly unfold the whole force field. Why we talk about force field or potential energy function or potential energy surface representation? Reason is it is actually can be connected with the potential energy or kinetic energy or total energy on the right hand side with left hand side from mass into acceleration, which is the force. Hence, this left hand side depicts mass into dv dt, which is the force depiction from mass into dv dt, not d to v dt. Please note. And that means this is a rate of motion, that is rate of velocity. Hence, acceleration represented by dv dt multiplied by mass is the force. And it is related or correlated in the expression by minus del ux, whereas u is the total function. It can be potential energy plus kinetic energy. Here is the equation, very simple, simplifies all our calculation due to the fact that it has on the left hand side the derivative is with respect to velocity with respect to time. On the right hand side it is del ux, which is needed to be integrated, and that comes from the u is dependent variable with x, not with time. The source for force field functions and parameter sets are derived from experimental work and high-level quantum mechanical calculations. Hence, that most often the energy functions are so well suited or fitted to the actual structures available, that estimation of energy within the error are really very well correlated with the experimental data. And this is the beauty of force field concept utilized in macromolecules and makes the life much easier and computable. What basically force field is content of is the concept which is content two systems. One is functional form or equation, another is the parameter sets, which is something like a constants which are derived from the experiments. Basically, this describes the potential energy surface of the system, which I'll come to the next module. So, force field depicts in a chemistry terms called potential energy surface function, in physics terms a negative gradient of a scalar potential. So, it contains two terms, and as it's been shown here, there would be bonded terms which are the covalently linked atoms. Another is non-bonded terms which are non-bonded terms as it specifies. It will be long-range electrostatic interactions or Lennard-Jones or van der Waals forces. And we will go through this in the following slides with their expressions. Here I am showing you what is the potential energy function, mathematical equation of it. Basically, it is nothing but a mathematical equation which states almost similar to potential energy functions. The terms which is shown in the top refers to the bond length, bond angle, and related to torsional angles. And this is specified as an empirical force field. These parameters like Kb, K theta, K phi, etc. are derived from the knowledge already known from spectroscopics and other experiments, and B zeros, which are the equilibrium distance of the comes from the X-ray structure of the small molecules. This equation basically relates the energy function or conformational energy functions with the structure of the molecule. Here I show you the general form of force field. Actually, the form should contain, which is called left hand side E total, contains the E covalent bonds or bonded expression and non-bonded expressions. So, covalent bond or bonded expression should include the three bonded terms and sometimes even more, which I will show you later. So, one comes from E bond, all the bonds, possibly all the bonds available in the system, all the E energy angle contributed and dihedrals contributed. Whereas E non-bonded is all the bonds available or non-bonded criteria supporting energies are electrostatics plus all the van der Waals interactions. So, as you will see it, bond angle and this are most often been modeled as harmonic oscillators. So, energy functions are more or less look like harmonic oscillators. How good they fit in, I'll show you later. Now, non-bonded terms on the other hand has a very different type of expressions. They normally include the pairwise interaction for atoms which are not bonded each other. Van der Waals terms are computed precisely from Lennard-Jones potential and electrostatic terms are computed from Coulomb law. Van der Waals terms here depicts the calculated from Lennard-Jones, and these are 612 potentials. Attractive falls off with a distance of as R6 and repulsive is R12, as you see from this plot shown. Here we show you the two plots. One is Lennard-Jones, another is actual expression if you calculate. As you see very well that it's important to notify how fast it becomes zero, and that's called cutoff radius. The reason is plenty of van der Waals terms are available in protein or macromolecules because many interactions are dominated by van der Waals terms. This huge number of atoms which are not bonded has to be calculated, repeated in the total calculations. To speed up this, instead of calculating those values of van der Waals terms which a tendency is only becoming 0. A cutoff distance which is greater than this value will become 0 is always considered to calculate. Hence, only the distance cutoff after 8 angstrom in general is sufficiently good for van der Waals terms to be taken care of. We will discuss about electrostatic terms. Coulombic interaction is taken care by this expression. So we add this as our energy. As you see here, all the non-bonded interaction of charges and atoms which are not connected are calculated and summed up. Here is a very important term, and that is the D. D is the term for dielectric constant. This is interesting because depending on the value of, sometimes we consider depending on value of D, inside the protein or outside the protein, the value of the Coulombic potential or energy term will change. However, this term has another difficulty more than Lennard-Jones, and the reason is it falls with a slower fall with respect to 1 by R instead of 1 by R6. Hence, we require a large cutoff radius, and this requires that it should not be atoms within the cutoff radius are interacting and suddenly the next atom falls off. Hence, many system has been utilized to remove this anomaly, and one of them is switching or scaling functions, which is smoothens out at the boundary of cutoff radius. Another, and which is more rigorously used, is called use of particle mesh Waals method, which is very profound method in calculating the interaction of the two atoms which are falls apart because of their distance. We will not discuss much in this about the particle mesh methods. Another important term which actually is neglected here is the multiple algorithm. That is, every charges would have not only the dipole interaction which is depicted by Coulomb, but it will have multiple also, which is mostly neglected in our energy term for protein interactions. Here we are discussing about the functional form of all the potential force fields, all the forms. So, there could be additional forces like we call variations, that is how we introduce hydrogen bonds. Sometimes some of the potential energy functions by some of the softwares exclusively takes care of hydrogen bonds. And most of the potential functions need to take care of something called improper torsion, which major important role because of the planarity of aromatic rings, planarity of peptide bonds like conjugated system, etc. And this torsion is specifically taken care as will be shown in the next. There are other terms as well, which is called cross term, like interaction between dihedral angle and bond length or bond angles. Those also sometimes plays important role and one can introduce in our energy expression. So I would just summarize in my next slide the different types of terms what we have used mostly in most of the potential energy functions. Here I am showing you all the force field terms or potential functions and their corresponding expressions as well, that which will be utilized or used in our total potential function forms. The first one shows the standard function as a simple harmonic motions. R depends on the distance, how much it deviates from the R0 and the force constant of bond lengths, bond angles, and the torsion angles. As you see here, deviation is only thing we measure in while we calculate the energy functions. We do not measure actual total energy. Please note this important fact. Hence, we are looking at variations of structure, not the 0 point energy structure of the system. So, non-bonded energy function is depicted in Lennard-Jones terms, which is shown here with the 612 potential functions, and which depicts sigmas are the dip or the energy where it is got the lowest energies. Also the electrostatics, which is also described earlier. Now about the hydrogen bond I will come back later, and explicitly how the hydrogen bond shown is here, but the functions will be described later. we come to the point of bonding terms and bonding states. So each of these potential functions will be described how that behaves by plot. Here on the left hand side is the function and right hand side is a plot if you use this function. As you see rightly, the deviation from the lowest energy point, that is if it doesn't be exactly how it should be in crystal structure, however more it deviates, it produces a positive energies. This energy function sometimes can be used, substituted by most potential function, which is also can be shown here, and the function is shown here explicitly. This might be useful when one likes to really understand the interaction of bond length or influence of bond length on different systems. Also, this type of function can be used in different kind of bonds like coordination bond, etc. So two functions can be used, but normal functions are used in all these softwares are the first function, which is harmonic function. Here I show you using different kind of constant or k value bond constants and values which are B0, that is crystal structure values. Here are the three samples shown. One is single bond CC or double bond or triple bond CC carbon. And here are the energies, that is bond energies, and is experimentally found. And this is the values, what should be the zero values. If we plot, as you look at this function, only this function shows the stiffness of the curve. However, the point minimum energy distance also little bit changes. And it is very steeper as the k function depending on the k values as it's shown here in this plot. Now, I will talk about the bonding terms or angle and bending of angles, which shown by harmonic potential as usual, and the one sample plot is shown here on the right hand side. However, charm force fields uses another software which uses Urey-Bradley and this Urey-Bradley angle terms as well. In many cases, these are very important to got the values from fitting the vibrational spectra. Hence, it's not only gives sometime the function angular values, but sometime the distance of 1-3 atom distances. References are given for detail of these kind of terms to be found out. Here we define the torsion. Now 2-3 terms we have to remember. One is the bond length. This is taken care, 1 and 2 interaction is taken care by bond length. Hence, in the bottom as it's shown, the interaction between 1-2 interaction is made 0 while considering the torsion only. Similarly, the angle between 1-2-3 or 2-3-4 are taken care by bond interaction, that is bond angle. So as it's shown the values like that. So only interaction is 1-4, that is one atom number 1 to atom number 4 is used in torsional functions. This sometimes it is used as 1, which is fully unscaled function, which is depicted on the right hand side by k torsion constant 1 plus cos n phi minus delta, where n is the which will come to next slide to show you n can vary depending on the bond. If it is a single bond between 2 carbon, it might have 3 minimas and it will be shown later. So delta is the phase angle, a small phase angle, which is used in case of torsion measurement. However, we must remember any interaction which is more than 1 to 4 distances are considered only in Lennard-Jones terms, and all interaction considered fully with a weight is 1, equal weight. Whereas some system 1-4 interaction can be scaled. This depends on how the user like to use it. We have now torsion terms detail and how it display, particularly when n is the periodicity of the angle as I did describe. So it can have how many peaks it has. So here you can see there are 3 of them. So n equal to, here often it can be even up to 6, but at least we know that there are 3 peaks. So n equal to 3 here. So it can have a dip, it can have 1 peak or 2 peak. More detail is shown in the next slide. Phase angle are often either 0 or 180 depending on what system we are using. Here is a detail of a aliphatic chain which shows you how many conformer or configuration can take care and how their torsion potential can be. Here I show you here there are many of these gauche and trans. Most best trans would be the point which is shown here by writing by D. That is the lowest point, because 2 CH2s which are shown here, 2 CH3 molecules should be totally at staggered, and which is shown here. Hence, we can so many possibilities of a single bond rotation or torsional terms, and that depends on what value of n you take and what should be the phase value. As I have shown you the previous slide, which has depicted the function, how the torsional rotation can happen in the molecule having sp3 hybridized bonds. I am showing you how their energy function will vary with respect to the angle, torsion angle, that is phi is in x-axis, and energy functions varied on the potential energy function shown in the y-axis. There are 3 plots, each one of them shows variation with n equal to 1 and n equal to 2 and n equal to 3 as I, j, k refers. And here you can see the variation is actually referring to the potential minima. So the minima shifts accordingly. This is shown as a delta equal to 0. Now delta also can shift the minima positions, as you can see from the equation. However, this is the equation is used in all the formula what you are evaluating total potential energies from contribution from all the torsion angles. Here I depict or show you how to take care of improper torsion. And as I have discussed earlier, out of plane motion is also contributes to the energy. Most often the planar peptide unit like to be planar, like sp2 hybridized carbons or aromatic rings, sometimes even sp hybridized carbons. They would like to be very much on planar structure. To retain that planarity, the angles taken is from away from 2 planes, which is shown here in the picture, and the expression is shown by this formula or by this formula, depends on which type of softwares one uses. The calculation of the bottom expression is very fast, whereas the other one is a little slower. However, because of the normal torsion terms described above, that is not sufficient to maintain this planarity. Hence, we just try to use these additional functions. And it's shown in which case of side chains we have taken that kind of functions. How the non-covalent forces act and how their functions can be with respect to distance. Here you can see the charge-charge interaction, the strongest interactions, and they take 1 by r, which is used by Coulombic or something interaction. Now, charge dipole interactions can be taken care by exclusively usage of function like 1 by r square. So, all the non-covalent forces you can add up to your expression as it may the case arise. And here is those interactions shown here. Interestingly, dipole-induced dipole interactions, which happens between something like HCl and CH4. So, solvent interaction, when you use different kind of solvent, must also show an interaction must be counted and explicitly taken care of. Hydrogen bonds, on the other hand, are so explicit and very exquisite interaction. Hence, we will talk about later on about the hydrogen bonds. Here comes Van der Waals interaction. As I have described earlier also, what is the definition of these epsilon values? They are the lowest bit energy where the attractive and repulsive forces cut off to each other. And functions can be found out by these expressions, particularly if there are 2 types of atom and not similar carbon-carbon, but instead they are nitrogen and oxygen and they are non-bonded. We can calculate the average distance like this, and the functions epsilon ij can be calculated by this expression. Distance and energies of shown across here in a detailed function used as 612 potential. Major cases, this is how it looks like. Here is the Coulombic interaction. The major point here to note is that Coulombic interaction of similar charges would look differently from red and green as it shows, yellow as it's shown in this plot. Now, D is most important, and which is normally taken as a dielectric constant, and it's a constant values. However, in some of the software packages, the D can be substituted by the distances between two atoms, like in amber. So, in many cases, according to the demand of the interactions, one uses different kind of values. One must remember, most important part is how you use the cutoff for Coulombic potential, and it does influence the structure very strongly and energy functions as usual. Actually, this slide shows a potential energy function in its full form. What I mean is two parts. One is intramolecular, which is shown on the top, which has bond angle, bond length, torsion angles, improper dihedral angles, as well as Uri-Bradley expressions. And the bottom shows the intermolecular, that is non-bonded interaction. And these are sometimes called external interactions, they're sometimes called non-bonded terms. In the bottom, you can see the Q1, Qj, 4 pi dr function, that is Coulombic, and the second function comes from Lennard-Jones potential. However, once we get these two together, we actually get our total intramolecular parameters and functions, which is shown in the next slide. Here we show both the functions. On the top is full function, 3 of them, and each terms are depicted here. You can look at. And this is an additional term of intramolecular parameters. And as you see from left hand side is all these derived from the terms are values are derived from the crystal structures or known infrared, etc. Force constant on the other hand are purely experimental values are derived. Major softwares, they use the function which is shown in the top, not much with improper and Uri-Bradley. However, many functions do use both of them. Basically describing how the non-bonded interactions are taken care of. As you notice, 1, 2, 1, 3 interactions are already taken care by the bonded terms, hence they are excluded here. However, 1, 4 interaction does come in the torsion as well as in the interaction of van der Waals potentials. Hence, because they are included, but they are also partly included in the torsion angle. Hence, some systems, some of the softwares, packages, and the potential energy expression in OPLSA, they scale this interaction by 0.5 for both electrostatic and LJ potential. In amber also scales 0.5 for LJ and 1 by 1.2 or so for electrostatic. However, CHARM has a special term delivered for 1 to 4 interactions. Why this is so important? The reason is written in the next slide, this slide itself in the corner, which says that very clearly, that even though there are all the non-bonded interaction and the 1/4 term are often calculated with the bonded terms. The reason is that it comes, as I explained to you earlier, it comes also a part of torsional angles, energies. So, there could be a question, and this is interesting question, is the number 1/4 terms are the same as the number of torsional terms? I will leave this question to you to answer. There are two special cases other than what I discussed earlier, and they are planarity and stereochemistry of the molecule, which is decided because all the amino acids happens in proteins are stereochemically L. And there are different stereochemistry also for sugars in DNA. Hence, one has to remember that we should retain by our force field the planarity of the molecule and stereochemistry of the molecule. How it should be, what are the torsion angles used for that are shown in the next slide. Also, it must retain the appropriate presentation of all the full functional force field. So, next slide shows the special cases. I have told earlier, but I would like to even more emphasize here the special terms like planarity and keeping the stereochemistry of every amino acids or nucleic acids or carbohydrate particularly to be special case. And here I discuss that. Special cases for planarity and stereochemistry is depicted by two expressions and two chemical structures, which depicts that where it should be available and why we should use these functions. So, summarizing this particular module, I would like to emphasize that all the atomic interaction, that is atom to atom interactions, which are non-bonded, have been elaborated. Also, it has been elaborated the bonded interactions and how the bonded and non-bonded separately utilizes intermolecular coordinates like coordinates XYZ, and in the case of bonded, we have utilized intra-interactions. That means the bonded interactions. Hence, the two types of parameters associated with the structure has been utilized. In one case, that is for bonded interaction, the Z matrix have been used, and in case of non-bonded, the distances between two atoms have been utilized. We have also emphasized and explained very well which are the interaction in something like Lennard-Jones and electrostatic interaction should be excluded of, and torsional importance of torsional interactions have been taken care of very widely, particularly when it comes to stereochemistry and ring atom or saturated ring bonds or unsaturated ring structures explained. However, one must remember that the force field or the potential energy surface are nothing but expression of a mathematical formula. So, this has been developed empirically. However, the consistency of these parameters which have been developed, brought out and fitted for these equations are actually derived from experimental values, makes these parameters and this particular expression to be very useful to explain biological functions. And this is what the crux of this particular potential energy functions. In next modules, we will elaborate what different kind of potential expressions are there, how many different kind of parameters one utilizes, and how they are derived from the experimental data. That will cover the next concept. However, one must remember still all the way that these force fields are not exact and the 0-point energy. These are depicts and explains the interaction between two states. One is the equilibration state, that is what is normally available from crystal structures, or we call it stable state, and the other is how much it changes or it deviates from such equilibrium state. That difference of energy is most important to calculate, and that is what is called enthalpy in most cases, where we include the energies of potential energy, kinetic energy, etc., and define it as thermodynamic parameter called enthalpy.